Here's where I stand. I don't care what stripe they are. Every one of them takes an oath to uphold the Constitution, and none of them adhere to the oath.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report. Before we begin this interview with David Morgan, which turned out to be a fun one as we answered some viewer-submitted questions, just a quick word from this interview's sponsor about your health. Did you know that collagen may be the closest thing that we found to a real fountain of youth? Many health experts now agree that consuming collagen is crucial to renewing and revitalizing how you look and feel. Because collagen is the most abundant protein in your body, and it essentially is the glue that holds you together. In fact, after the age of 20, people produce 12% less collagen in their skin every decade, which can lead to skin sags, wrinkles, hair getting thinner, nails losing their strength, joints becoming stiff, recovery from activity and exercise slowing, and in general, our body's just turning on us. So if you want the age-defying benefits of collagen, it's crucial to consume the 5 right types of collagen. And I'm going to leave you the link below this video, which will help explain all of it and get you the collagen you need to get your skin healthy and supple, make your hair youthful looking, support joint flexibility, strengthen nails, teeth, and gums, promote strong, healthy muscles, tendons, and ligaments, while also promoting stronger bones while supporting digestive health. So, support your health today with collagen. Click the link below. It's my favorite source for this important health supplement. Guys, it's great to welcome back to the show, the one, the only, the founder of the Morgan Report. David, welcome back. How are you?
Sean, it's great to be with you, and I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming back on. We're going to do a screen share here in a second and talk about some current events, and then we're going to move in specifically to questions that some of my Twitter followers have for you, David. And as we kick off the new year here, we see gold is at $15.55. Silver is at about $18. Bitcoin, having a nice bounce, is back to $88.25, with Litecoin also bouncing nicely at $58. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about cryptos, but let's talk about current events just briefly first. You got to get a kick out of those Democrats, David. I don't know if you saw this, but creepy porn lawyer Michael Avenatti has been arrested again for violating the terms of his release. These people on the left, man, the hits just keep coming. And now Project Veritas is, of course, showcasing these lunatics that are in Bernie's camp, saying that those of us that don't want to be re-educated to the new communist ways of thinking will probably have to be put in re-education camps. Did you catch that one?
I did see that one. I read the headline, and I guess at this point I've become so jaded with so many things and cynical on almost everything that very little surprises me. It's just par for the course, as they say, and it's, you know, from the big picture perspective, this is exactly what you see at the end of the Age of Empire. I mean, you see all kinds of dislocations and kookier ideas as you get near that final moment, whatever that means. But basically, it means that the system is ending, and that doesn't mean everything goes away. It just means that there is an overused word, a reset of some type, and it can be a reset primarily financially, but that covers a lot of other topics, obviously, because we're all dependent on the system as it currently exists, which means if you don't have money, you don't have the ability to do very many things. So I don't want to go too long-winded there, but lots of changes ahead, and how soon, I wish I knew for sure, but I doubt we could go 5 years further in the current paradigm. I'm looking more like 2 or 3, and then some type of, you know, currency reset, financial reset, societal reset, political reset. Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of these things will happen more or less simultaneously, and one could take place officially and affect the others indirectly, but affect them as substantive enough that everyone would realize that we're in a new paradigm.
Yeah. Well, I hope the reset isn't a reset into communism. I mean, that is what the left would see as their vision for this country. You mentioned the end of empire. I hope it's not the end of the republic. I think the republic needs a hard reset, monetarily and otherwise. And I think the question we'll lead off with here in a second from one of the submissions is about what that reset of the dollar looks like. You know, Wayne Jett, when I had him on, predicted a gold-backed currency would be rolled out in the next year or two, and maybe the reset wouldn't be that much of a hard landing with the depreciation of our purchasing power. So we'll have to see how that shakes out and get your opinion. But let me do a screen share here. I'm going to take a look at Zero Hedge. And what do we see? More hits from the lefties. Epstein trafficked girls as recently as 2018, some as young as 11 years old, according to lawsuit by Virgin Islands Attorney General. CNN under fire for overtly hostile treatment of Sanders in Iowa debate. Boy, it's just become real clear to me that CNN, for whatever reason, wants Elizabeth Warren in the White House. And I suppose if they can't get Hillary Clinton, they want Elizabeth Warren. Pocahontas. 18 signs of social decay in America is worse than it's ever been before. I don't know if you've seen the news coming out of Baltimore, but Baltimore is now more dangerous as a city to live in than some third world cities, David. It's just out of control. The answers from the left would be to seize the guns, and of course then only the bad guys would have guns. Here's one. No matter how much money the Fed prints, we still can't afford nice things. That's because the money, the printing, is going directly to the bankers first. And sometimes it trickles down to we the people, but the bankers get to spend it first. Right, David?
That's correct.
I said last night I'm talking with David Morgan tomorrow. If you have any questions, please submit them. And I think this is a really good one. Plays into what Wayne Jett said when I had him on to some degree. I wonder what you think about this. This is from J.E., who says, everything pertaining to the Fed, its end and transition to asset-backed currency. How would Trump flip the switch? A vote in Congress? An executive order? Like the old JFK Executive Order 1110? If Treasury absorbs the Fed, what might that look like? Could other U.S. natural resources, in addition to the two metals, silver and gold, back the dollar? Boy, that's a big question, isn't it, David? Your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. And honestly, if I knew the answer, I would give it, but I will give you my thought process on it. So if you're not wanting to listen to a build a watch answer, get a cup of coffee and come back in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's look at what we know. What we know is that the executive order, I think it was 1110, something along those lines, you can look it up, was substantive enough that it did cause a change in the currency from a Federal Reserve note to a United States note. And I had those out on the previous interview that we decided to do this one over. But there is a Fed note, as you can see at the top, and that is a private banking consortium. And this is a United States note, which was under that executive order of John F. Kennedy. So that's all it took. And I would hasten to state that's probably all it would take again. Is that the exact route Trump would take? I have no idea. Would he go through Congress? I don't know, but I doubt it. That's my personal belief. I can't prove that. But I want to go back. So let's go back to Bretton Woods, 1944, Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And the idea was a reset. And the reset after World War II was not really a global currency, but if you think about it, in a way it was, because the United States dollar was the reserve currency for everyone. And the edict, the mandate, the paperwork said that we would fix gold at $35 per ounce, and everybody that traded in dollars could exchange those dollars for gold at that fixed rate. And of course, that came to an end August 15th, 1971. So I give that background for this reason. If you go to the M1 money supply, and I disagree with a lot of my peers, for me, as JP Morgan said, and I'm not a fan, believe me, nor am I related, but the idea that gold is money and everything else is credit means that M1, these physical things and what's in your checkbook, that's the M1 money supply. Again, you can Google it and learn. And that is the gold supply. That's when you're backing everything by gold. So M2, M3, credit, a future payment, all that is credit. It's not money. It's future money in most cases. So if we go to 1980, and we look at the amount of gold that the Treasury purportedly had, which is roughly 265 million ounces. And we looked at the M1 money supply at the peak where gold hit $850 per ounce. And we did the simple arithmetic of how many M1 dollars are out there and how much gold. You divide dollars by gold and you get the paper price of gold. And that in 1980 at 850 came out for $400 an ounce gold. 400. which means the M1 money supply in 1980 would have been a complete total 100% cover of gold by 2 times. It went to 850. It only needed to go to 400. And you would have a gold standard reenacted at that time. If anyone could have, would have, should have said, okay, we're going to go back on a gold standard. It's been, Nixon said it was temporary, and now we have a full cover of gold that's purportedly in Fort Knox, and the dollar is now deemed as good as gold, and the new set price is 400 an ounce or 800 an ounce, whatever they wanted to fix it at. They could have, they didn't. It was a temporary thing. It shot up on a spike. I think we all know that. I'm making the point that the simplest way to go back would be a gold standard. Will that take place? I don't know. Will Trump enact something? I think my belief would be if he did do it, I think the easiest, most direct way to do it would be by executive order. How would it look? Well, I don't know exactly, but here's my thinking. It's a tough question, by the way, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of comments. David's wrong. I don't think anyone can be wrong or right on this answer. And I'm just thinking, it's tough to answer this kind of a question right off the bat.
Well, it means a much higher gold price, right? What's M1 at today?
So thanks for that, because I needed that input. So now if you fast forward to today, where's the M1 money supply? And it's like, I forget, 6 times higher, something along those lines. Basically, if you do the same math, it come out to about 13,000, 14,000 an ounce for M1. So this is why, when you say like Jim Sinclair or my friend, my other friends that talk about, 50,000 or whatever, well, that's to cover all the debt. But all the debt is not going to be covered. We know most of this debt is going to go away. It's not going to be paid off. It's going to be dissolved one way or another. But just to go back to cash only, where there is no credit whatsoever, I'm not saying that's going to take place. I'm just doing a thought experiment so we can get to the brass tacks of this question. If we did that, you'd have like roughly $10,000 an ounce gold for full cover. Not quite, 14 is the exact number, but you can make up, get the idea. The idea, not the exact number, is what's important. So that would put us back on a gold standard. Silver, I don't think will be implemented as a monetary asset ever again. I could be wrong. I think, well, let me say that it could be, and it is, on a very cursory level, meaning, private transactions between 2 parties or a business and a third party or whatever. And there is some silver-backed cryptos that do serve as a monetary function. But for a government to institute silver as a monetary asset, I really doubt that will ever happen.
Well, that's a nice segue to this question from Crypto Sayin, who says, why is gold, platinum, and palladium moving up but not silver? And is silver worth it to keep in numismatic coins? So you can speak. I think maybe you did just speak to why silver is not moving up. I would add to that manipulation, but you can comment on that. But I think it ties in nicely to this question. How low do you see the gold to silver ratio going down to? Right now at 15.55 gold and 18 silver, that's a silver to gold ratio of 86-1, which is absurd given historical norms. Why in the world is silver not moving up much, much higher as gold moves up? And of course, when gold does move up 20 bucks in a day, we see silver go up 33 cents, which in percentage terms might be more. But where do you see the gold to silver ratio going, David?
Well, what I just spouted off on is covered in an article I wrote, one of the first ones on the internet. I think it's still there. I don't think it's on my website anymore, but it's called Engineering the Price of Gold. I go through the M1 I just talked about. And in that same article, Engineering the Price of Gold, I talk about, okay, now that's how you get the paper price of gold. What about silver? And I went on to explain that when silver is money, it has a classic ratio of about 15 or 16-1. And then I said, in a blow off top, similar to what we had in 1980, I could envision a 10-1 ratio. So those words are already on the internet. It's been there since about 2003. I won't take them back. I wrote them then. And do I think it could happen now? Actually, I do. The problem we have with the silver market is there's too many people my age that aren't, acquainted with the full function of what silver is all about. If you go back, and I'm going to do this lecture, and Sean, I'm going to do a webinar on this because I've decided that to do it. And so it'll be this month after I get back, probably from the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference on the 19th and 20th of this month. I'll probably schedule it the last week of January, but it's going to be what if silver was treated like gold? And in that, I go through the 4,000 plus years where gold and silver had the same exact function, and that's money only. Before the electronic era, before silver was used to conduct electricity or used in wires or anything else, and when both of them function as money, there's only one time where the silver gold ratio got as high as 20. And most of the time it stayed around 12, which is really the natural ratio how it came out of the ground. Once the bankers saw and this is somewhat conjecture, I mean, most of this is fact, but if you go to the Wizard of Oz, the crime of 1873, where silver was demonetized, and the whole political structure at that time revolved around the question of demonetizing silver and taking silver out of the pockets of those, let's say, working class, the farmers, the cowboys, the ranchers. Most of the working people use silver in everyday transactions, but the bankers had the yellow brick road, which was the one only gold system going to the Emerald City with their green pieces of paper. And Dorothy from Kansas, who didn't know anything, had on silver slippers. And so basically it was a metaphor about the working people with the lion, the tin man, and the scarecrow. The public is stupid. The public doesn't have enough heart, and they don't have enough courage to go against, the great Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, follow the yellow brick road and find the men behind the curtain.
So Bill Still did an excellent video on it. You can watch it. Type in Bill Still, Wizard of Oz. It's free. You can see it on YouTube. Much more detail than I gave you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it other than this has been going on for a long time. So now that you've demonetized silver, and the generation after mine, my kids, your kids, they don't know anything about the history of money, and they don't really care to know because everything they do is off their phone, and that's all they're focused on, and it's deliberate in my view. So I think if silver could still go to those heights for two reasons. It's probably more than two, but the two that come to my mind are, one, a reinstitution of silver as a monetary asset or safe haven, even though it won't be officially done by any central bank, in my view. It'd be wonderful if they did. And that's part of my webinar. And the other one is it could just do what palladium did, where palladium actually classically is money. If you go by Aristotle's outline of true money, palladium and platinum both fit that, but neither one of them, even by yours truly, is really thought of as money. They are basically high-tech industrial commodities used primarily, in the palladium case, in catalytic converters. But look at what palladium has done. It's gone from, I think I recommended around 600 or 700. Unfortunately, I got out a little too early. Wish I held it another year, but we're at, $2,100 an ounce of palladium. This is something that could, I'm not saying would, but could happen in the silver market, where the demand on the industrial side is so astronomical that it starts to put a lot of pressure just from the industrial side alone. And then any additional buying pressure due to monetary or safe haven asset status would drive the price even higher. And especially if the manipulation system was compromised in one way, shape, or form, either officially or unofficially, where the COMEX could not basically function in a rational way. So I certainly don't rule out the fact that silver could have its day in the sun. I won't say I'm going to guarantee it. I'm not going to tell anyone anything differently from the very beginning when I came on the internet, and that is you don't want to put your life savings in the silver market or in the gold market for that matter. There are other places to invest, and a 10 or 20% hedge position is probably enough for almost everyone, and I wish everyone did that. I mean, I'm going to digress a bit, but there's a video I did called Myths in the Silver Market. You might type that in Google and watch it. And it was one of my pet peeves that these coin dealers say everyone ought to own a little silver. Well, if everyone owned a little silver, believe me, the price wouldn't be $18 an ounce. You can watch that video. You might get a chuckle out of it. So probably killed that question, Sean. Why don't you shoot me another one?
Well, no, I think that's interesting, and it sparks a thought about Bitcoin. I mean, not even every millionaire currently living in the world can own one Bitcoin because there's not enough Bitcoin out there, nor will there ever be. So it speaks to the scarcity of silver, and I think that the silver to gold ratio is so damn high because of the manipulation on the COMEX, etc. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Okay, another question. This one from AG Coyote, aka Wiley Coyote. He says, yes, ask him about the confiscatability of U.S. issued coins, silver coins and gold coins versus foreign sovereign bullion. Your thoughts, American Silver Eagles, is that the best, safest way to go, U.S. American Gold Eagles? Or do you feel like the days of confiscation are well behind us?
Well, I think they're behind us, but you look at what Charles Savoy has written on the website, which is now off at his request. But no, it's legal tender. It's at law. So if you are a U.S. citizen owning U.S. coins, basically at law, you can't take them. And so, if that were to occur, which I highly doubt, I think you'd have enough lawyers that are in the, I won't call it the honest money movement anymore because it really doesn't exist in that form, but there's enough awake or woke people, as we like to say, that would probably come to the fore and start a heavy lawsuit against the government. I just don't see it happen. The other part of it is psychologically. Do you think the government that had Bernanke say that gold isn't money to Ron Paul, it's only tradition, is going to change horses in the middle of the stream and say it's now money? I don't think they'll do that. I think they've got bigger problems. When the bond market starts to crash and resets force on them or is caused by them, either way it goes, it's going to occur. They have other issues to go to, and I don't think it's going to be taking gold. It might be utilizing gold in some way, shape, or form to reset the new system so there's trust reestablished. But I don't think, but that's the safest thing. If you are a Canadian, you'd want Canadian legal tender. If you're U.S., you want U.S. legal tender. The same applies for if you're in Austria or whatever. So that's the most logical way to go if you're worried about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, and I think the bottom line in this conversation as it pertains to precious metals or cryptos or land or homes or stocks or anything is something that you've really parroted quite often throughout your career, and it's the idea of diversification. You really ought to be diversified. If you're going to go all in any one sector, boy, it's nice to swing to for the fences, but if you don't hit a home run and you get 3 strikes, you're out, and diversification can help prevent that. So I think that might be a nice segue to what could be the final question here, and that comes from El Guapo, kind of being rude. He says, why would I ask a silver guy about cryptos? And that is a follow-up to my tweet, which said, feel free to ask him about the economy, the national debt, US dollar, gold, silver, or even Bitcoin. Now, in just the past couple of days, we've seen Bitcoin go from about 7,800 to 8,800. The whole crypto space has boomed again. There's a halvening coming up of Bitcoin in the next several months, which is a big event and usually drives the price far higher. When I first started talking about Bitcoin in any sort of positive way, because I was anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin, when my friend Brother John, you remember Brother John on YouTube, David?
I do.
That guy was one of the front runners. You want to talk about an early adopter. He even started a Bitcoin channel, and he took a lot of heat from those of us that were precious metals bulls and silver bugs. And to his credit, he was an early adopter, and Bitcoin at that point could have been gotten for under $100 per. Now it's 8,800. I finally said to my folks that would listen, you may want to consider dipping a foot in the pool when Bitcoin had retraced back down to about 400. So, with people like Max Kaiser saying Bitcoin could easily hit $100,000 in the future, what is your position on Bitcoin specifically, Litecoin, or cryptos in general?
Pretty neutral on it. Certainly, it's not my place to tell anybody how to invest. I mean, obviously, I've talked about the precious metals and the reasons I think it's a good idea. But, how many people agree with me? Far less than 1%, because that's how much is in the gold market. It's about 1% of total financial assets. And if you look at it from a silver perspective, it's 0.02%. So certainly, I'm not making any large charge here into the silver market. Although I'm certain that I've persuaded some people to get involved in the market. I wrote an article for the public called My 2 Bits About Bitcoin many years ago. I pretty much adhere to that. If I am who I say I am and I'm free market, it's not my right to tell anybody yes or no on Bitcoin and let the market decide. I did go on to say in that article, and it was very low at that time relative to this 8,800 right now, that if Bitcoin were to gather a lot of momentum and be owned far and wide, watch out, because the government hates to lose a monopoly. And that if that were to occur, which it has, then look for some government interference into the crypto world. And I think we've seen that kind of, in a way, because, you know, in the very, very early stages, you could be pretty anonymous, but then came the advent of more and more people, the early adopters, as you say, and they had to, you know your customer and get on an exchange to be able to exchange, you know, fiat into through some exchange in order to buy any of these cryptos for the most part. So it's very hard to stay anonymous in that world anymore. So I am, you know, neutral on it. I mean, look, if you like the crypto world, knock yourself out. I am associated with a silverback crypto. I like the ones that you have more anonymity than you do in, you know, the Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin world. A lot of my friends, I interviewed Cliff High. I mean, they basically said I was wrong, that you could still, you know, maintain. I don't want to misspeak what Cliff said, but my understanding of it is, you know, I'm a little overly worried about that part of it, that aspect of it. I may be, I don't know. I am for competing currencies. I am for any system that the people adopt that serves them and not the power elite. For that, I am absolutely for. What is the best form of that? I think that could remain to be determined. Maybe it'll be a blend. Maybe it'll be a silverback crypto. Maybe the silverback crypto becomes par excellence, you know, a decade out, and that is the most sought after currency available on the planet. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that kind of as a metaphor, excuse me, or an adjunct to the power of the people, if we have the power. But I'm afraid, Sean, as I said, you know, last time we spoke, that the bankers seldom lose, and that the next system may have all the, let's say, window dressing that we saw in 1913 when they passed the Federal Reserve Act very near the end of the year when everyone was on Christmas vacation. And there's some legal eagle types that have studied this and basically said that law was never enacted properly. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So maybe this next time we'll see it where it looks like it's everything done by, let's say, conservators of the Republic. And it looks like it was done in a manner that was sufficient for everybody that is freedom-based to be convinced that it was freedom-based. And then, you know, 20 years down the road, we discover that we've been, you know, new boss, same as the old boss, that actually it was pulled over our eyes again. Look, this whole system of corruption is getting more and more sophisticated all the time. And going back to the beginning of the interview, I mean, basically, if you don't agree, you're just going to go to re-education camp until you do, or, you know, your internal constitution is forfeited and you don't exist anymore. I mean, I hate to say that, but certainly let's not rule it out, because this is the direction they seem to be pushing. Either you agree with us, and if you don't, well, we got a place for you. And, you know, if you really want to study history, and I'm not the greatest study on everything, I focus mostly on the monetary side. But I mean, if you want to see the cruelty, I mean, you talk, you know, a lot of, let's say, more toward the current liberal side, talk about, you know, the religious wars. Won't rule them out. A fact's a fact. But if you look at how many people have died under communist dictatorships, you will have your eyes open if you don't know already. So, look, I wish I had a lot more answers. I wish I had an exact answer for, you know, there is going to be a new currency. We are going to restore the republic. We are going to give freedom back to everybody. And, you know, this idea of the nation state is everything the left asks for, in my view. If they want diversity, let's keep it. Let's let everybody keep their own nation state, their own culture, their own traditions, their own tribes, their own heritage, and be happy with it and love it and learn about it and keep it intact. And let's get that diversity going. Let's not keep this open border, one world mishmash of everybody's, you know, doesn't have any tradition or any comprehensive roots to be proud of or learn what their heritage is all about. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, you know, diversity spout I just spouted out, Sean?
Well, I couldn't agree more, to the degree that I think we see the battle lines being drawn right now clearly for the fight for the soul of this nation. And on the left, we see people like Bernie supporters explicitly stating that they're communists and that they are ready for a communist revolution. And those of us that don't want any part of it need to be re-educated in gulags. I'm not making that up. That's from Project Veritas. Meanwhile, over in Virginia, we see criminal Governor Ralph Northam openly declaring that he's coming after the guns. And we see a rebellion within that state with 90 out of 95 counties and cities saying, we are now gun sanctuaries. You will not come after our guns because the Second Amendment is the line in the sand. I think the battle lines are being drawn for the very soul of this nation, David. And those of us that are informed historically and otherwise stand on the side of the Constitution, not on the side of a Bolshevik revolution, not on the side of communism, not on the side of the banksters.
Well said. I have little to add, but I remember, because I don't like the political class whatsoever at all, just about anyone that's in it, including the current occupant, although I will say I am, and I'll pair it back to you, I am so grateful that the witch isn't in there. Believe me, that's a true statement.
Yeah.
But I was asked, early on in one of my gold, silver interviews, we'll call it, about, a political question and, where do you stand and what are your thoughts? I said, look, here's where I stand. I don't care what stripe they are. Every one of them takes an oath to uphold the Constitution, and none of them adhere to the oath. This is kind of where the oath keepers thing came from, not from me saying that, but, the idea that you make an oath to uphold the Constitution, all foreign or domestic, violators. And yet most of them are violators. And, the Second Amendment, it can't be more crystal clear, but they really don't teach the Constitution in the public school system anymore, but shall not be infringed. What part of the law doesn't that governor understand? That's the question. Right. He should be, given reschooled. Shall not be infringed. What does that mean? But this is, again, where we are. We can't argue how bizarre things have gotten in the society. And of course, there's this big stake for dividing everybody, making sure you know the differences rather than coming together. Martin Luther King, I think, had it best. And, I get flack for that from some people, but I think he was one of the greats, if not, in my view. And he said, that the arc of the universe bends slowly, but it bends towards justice. I kind of paraphrased it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true, that, the idea that we're all created equal doesn't mean we're all equal athletically or intellectually or skill sets. It means under the law that the lowest of the low on a financial basis or intellectual basis or any basis is treated equally to the highest IQ or money person. That's fair. But, that's ridiculous. I just saw the Just Mercy movie a couple days ago, and, I did have to hold back a little bit of wetness in the eyeballs because, that's what the thing is all about. It's based on a true story, and it's about the unjustness of the system. And I guess I will use the word appalled because I knew, but I didn't know the number of how many of these people that are on death row are there and shouldn't be there. It's 1 out of 9. If you watch other movies or read other things, and I'm pretty well read at, anyone that's in prison, I shouldn't be here. I'm not guilty. And, I don't think they all say that. I think there's some that know damn well that they are guilty and maybe should be there. But the point being that some are there that shouldn't be there. And 1 out of 9, that's what, 12% or something? That's very high, especially if you're on death row, for crying out loud. So I digress, but I think it made the point, Sean. We've got a corrupt system. It's there for one reason and one reason only. And the real religion, whether you believe it or not, is that currency I put up at the beginning. It's all about the almighty dollar. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what political class you come from. It doesn't even matter what your total global belief system is. Everyone is worshiping that dollar. And this is the problem. And the power elite know it. And they use it as a control mechanism. And if we don't get out of that control mechanism in the next system, we really haven't gained anything. And it looks to me like we're losing the most precious gift we have, and it has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with freedom. It has to do with your time and what you can do with it, what you can say, where you can go, how you can express yourself. And look, even I, who's pretty outspoken, I find myself oftentimes these days being politically correct because I just don't want the flack and I just don't want the argument. But really, I'm kind of giving in to the system because that's what the system wants from me. They don't want me to be confrontational. They want me to go along, get along, rather than holding my ideology everywhere with everyone. And honestly, I don't do that.
Well, like I said, though, the battle lines are being drawn, and everybody's hand is going to be forced to play the cards they've got. And, I think that the battle lines are really being drawn there in Virginia, the birthplace to so many of our founding patriots. Ironic to see what's happening there. And Patrick Henry maybe had a great quote, "Give me liberty or give me death." That will be the rallying cry if these bureaucrats and Democrats and communists continue to push their agenda. I want to do this as we part ways. I'll give people a sneak peek of the Morgan Report. You can tell people how to get it. Quote there at the top for the Volume 22, Issue 1, January 2020. There are two things almost everyone thinks about, wants, or makes a resolution for: to get in shape and or to get their finances in order. And this is a really great piece, guys, a really great report. I can't share it all with you here, but we get down into some specific stock tips as well in the Morgan Report. David, you want to tell people how they can get it?
Sure, just go to themorganreport.com, our main website. You can get our free newsletter, which is not the Morgan Report. It's just an update. I do a weekly perspective in the interviews I do like this that are public domain. We send them to you. I also have that the paid version, which you can go to the subscribe button on the morganreport.com and scroll down. You'll get a pretty good idea of what the whole thing is all about. And of course, there's a money back guarantee. If it's not for you, let us know. No questions asked. So that's it then. Thank you, Sean. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and appreciate the hard questions. There were some tough ones in there.
There's some doozies in there. I mean, who can predict what's going to happen with this dollar in a world gone mad? And who knows what's coming next? I will stand by my thesis, though, that to have a little physical gold and silver as a diversified tool against whatever's coming is not a bad idea in a world filled with fiat. David Morgan has been our guest. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks for your support. A special shout out to our patrons who are keeping us in the fight for truth. And guys, I'll remind you that for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda, where my top 3 videos, my latest videos, are always stickied right at the top of the page. Thanks for tuning in. God bless. Bye-bye.
I'd like to just make it clear that Barr and Durham are the only hope we have of changing what is now the Department of Just Us into a Department of Justice. They're the only hope for that to happen.